For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are what he has made us, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand to be our way of life. Ephesians 2, verses 8 through 10. Okay, so this is the fuel sending unit. And these obviously are the gas lines. This here is the evaporative emission sensor. Basically senses the pressure in the tank to make sure that you don't have a leak in the tank. So it's kind of a safety and environmental sensor. And this is the power to the pump. So, and then if you want to remove this, there is a big snap ring here. And there's 2 holes in it. And so you need snap ring pliers. And you put these in these 2 holes. And you squeeze these together, and it comes out from under these lips right here. And once you get that off, then you can just wiggle that thing back and forth, and it should come out. And it's tall enough that it reaches down to the bottom of the tank. So anyway, that's basically the drill here, and I'm going to remove these wires so that I don't get them messed up while I'm removing the snap ring. There's that one. This one looks like it has a little thing to keep it from popping out. So I am just going to pull this out. And that may be enough. Nope, not quite. All the way out. Pull that off. And out that comes. So now, finish removing this snap ring. There's that. And now, there it is. So there's what the sending unit looks like, and that's what we'll be replacing. And I'm going to look down inside the tank here and remove the rest of the gas and make sure that there's not a lot of crud on the bottom, and if there is, I'll clean that up. And actually, I'm looking at the rust on the outside of this tank. I may just go ahead and get another tank for it, because you can get them for $100 or so, $150 maybe. So anyway, that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. So actually, looking down inside that tank, it doesn't look bad. There's a little bit of debris in there, but really doesn't look bad. So I may just go ahead and scrape the rust off of this tank and hit it with some rubberized undercoat, and maybe give it a little bit longer to go. So anyway, that's what it's looking like now. Okay, so I bought some undercoat paint, and I scraped off all the excess rust on the tank and painted it. So hoping that that is gonna last for a little while longer. Thoroughly removed all the gas from the tank and vacuumed out all the little black and rusty chunks of stuff that fell down in there, so it's very clean inside, even though it's kind of rusty on the outside. So that's why I decided to reuse it. So now we'll just put this back in there and give it a try. We need to remove the tape here. And now I'm going to take this float and install it in there like this. Okay, on this particular unit, the new connector for the pump does not match the old one from the harness. So I'm going to have to replace that with the one that they've provided here, this one, and I'm going to have to match up the wires with the right ones here, with the connector that fits and the appropriate wire colors. It looks like the wire colors are the same, so that'll be easy enough to match them up. And then they provided these butt splice pieces here, and then seals to go over the top of the joint. So now I'm going to install those. Okay, so I pull this conduit back a little bit, and it says, you know, cut these wires over here. So I'll cut this one probably about right here, because really what I'd like to do is have the splice covered by the conduit, so I may go a little bit further down here. Okay, and so now I'm going to strip these. So now if I reference this, it says A is the purple wire, and this came with a diagram here. So it says A on that one, looking at the back side, is right here. So looks like A is also the purple one on this, and B is the gray wire on here, and this gray wire is B also. So I hooked the purple to the purple and the gray to the gray, and this larger one, C, over here is equivalent to C, which kind of looks like it's a little heavier gauge wire for C, so that would be this one over here. So the larger gauge black wire goes over here, and the only one left is the smaller black wire, and that must go to D, which on the original had a white stripe, but the replacement doesn't. So we will hopefully get those correctly matched, and if we don't, we will be taking it apart again. So now we'll strip these wires. So these are the butt splices. So I'm going to go purple to purple. Before I make a big mistake, and don't put the seal on there. Because if you forget to put the seal on there, then you run out of butt splices. So I'm going to just slide this up on there first. And actually, I'm going to slide all three of these, or all four of these on here, so I don't forget, because inevitably, that's what I do. So I'm going to use this kind of crimper. I'm going to go for the purple wire. Alright, and that is a problem. Crimp doesn't hold. So that looks a little better. I got two crimps on each side of the butt splice. And then I can just slide that right over, and then I will get my heat gun out when I get all these together. Okay, this is my heat gun that I'm going to use to shrink wrap or shrink the insulation around the splices that I made. Okay, and so the idea is you make those nice and tight around the wire to keep the water out of there. And then we can put it back into the harness, or the conduit rather. Okay, so I've got the new sending unit in here, and there is a little locating tab right here that goes into a slot on the base. It's right there, and so that's how you line it up. And the other thing that I did is there's a big fat O-ring right here, and I put a little grease on that O-ring as recommended by the instructions to help it slide in there, because otherwise you might have a little difficulty getting that down in there. So it's spring loaded, so it's going to set a little high. Line those marks up. And there, it slides in. So now we can put our snap ring back in. Yep, and it looks like I'm supposed to have the snap ring opening on either side of that locating thing. And there we go. It is seated. Now we can hook up the fuel lines. So since I was smart enough to leave the old hoses on the old sending unit, I now can just match up the hoses. This was the only one that I took off because if you remember right, I had a seal or something that I thought was a seal come out of the end of this one, and actually it was just a spacer. So the O-ring is underneath it, and then there's a spacer, and so the O-ring was still in there, and when I pulled this off of the steel line, the spacer came out with the steel line, so I was just able to take a socket and push it back in there. I checked the O-ring, and the O-ring still seemed to be good. So alright, so I'm going to try to reuse these clips here. Okay, so the trick to getting these off is I just took a little screwdriver and pushed it under this tab right there, and that's what engages that clip on there. And so that was the easiest way to do it. rather than trying to bend it. So just take that one, slide it on there, clips on. This one looks a little different, actually. All right, so that's the big one. Different sizes, so the fuel feed is the big one. I'm going to do this trick with these things again. I think that one's over the hump. And turn it around. There's that one. We'll put that on the big one. And now this one. Okay, so this one, you just have to squeeze those. There's a couple things. Squeeze those down. And that comes off. Doesn't look like there's a clip required for this one. So that one should just slide right on and clip into place like that. And this is the bigger one. Snaps on. And this one, line up with the clip. And that snaps in. So all of those are secure.